إن الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا من يهدي الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله صلى الله عليه وسلم. Verily all praise are due to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and we praise Him alone, and we seek His help and His forgiveness alone. We seek refuge in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala from the evil within ourselves and from the evil of our own actions. Whomsoever Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala guides, there is no one that can misguide, and whomsoever Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala leaves to be misguided, there is no one that can guide. I testify that none has the right to be worshipped, to be followed and obeyed in truth except Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And I testify that Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam is the servant of Allah, His last and final prophet and messenger, who was sent for the whole of mankind. And I testify that Islam is the only truth, the only way of life acceptable to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to send His peace and blessings upon the Messenger Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and upon his family and upon his companions. Amma ba'd. Today the topic, my dear Muslims, is about marriage in Islam. Now, first thing, obviously, some people might be shocked at the topic. Not necessarily because of the topic itself, but usually in this room, you're probably used to hearing about, dawah, confronting the Taghut head on, speaking the word of truth, talking about commanding good and forbidding evil, talking about jihad and world domination of Islam. And today we have marriage. Now, just to ease your hearts, we haven't changed our manhaj, we haven't changed our aqidah, we're still upon the same. But why we chose this topic? Obviously, my dear Muslims, when we learn about Islam, we have to learn Islam comprehensively. We don't pick certain parts that we like, that's easy to swallow, or the people like it. Other parts are too hard to swallow, or the kuffar are going to raise their eyebrows if we speak about these things. So we just leave it, brush under the carpet. Islam is a complete deen, it's a complete way of life. Therefore, as Muslims, we must learn about the deen comprehensively. And this is one of the problems we have in these times, where some people they'll learn about Iman, and they'll learn about Salah and its fiqh, they'll learn about Siyam and about Hajj, But what about Dawah? What about the rules of Jihad? What about the Khilafah system in Islam, the Islamic governing system? Many of these kind of topics have just been dissected and just put away. And this is why we have, amongst the people, we have many people that are ignorant on certain areas of Islam, because those kind of areas were never touched upon, or they're not seen as relevant or important, or too controversial to speak about. And that's why we have many people ignorant on certain areas of Islam, like the Khilafah, the Caliphate, how it works, its system, its rules, valid condition. Many people have lack of understanding on the area of jihad, about fighting, the rules of fighting. But even though they have that lack of knowledge in those areas, one of the problems we have today as well, people want to speak as if they know all about these areas. So obviously, my dear Muslim, we want to study Islam comprehensively. And the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he taught us everything we need to know. He mentions in one example where some kafir at his time, he was saying to one Sahaba that did your Prophet, he tell you how to, go to the toilet? So, as a way of mocking and belittle. And the Sahaba said, yes. He told us how to wash ourselves and into which direction to do it as well. So there's no shyness at all. The Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam taught everything about Islam, from how to pray to how to fast, how to do Hajj, how to do jihad, how to command good and forbid evil, how to do istinja, how to clean ourselves when we go to the toilet. And he also told us how to make Izhar al-Deen, to dominate the world by Islam. So, everything in Islam is being taught to us. And we do not need to look to anyone else or anyone else's book. We have the Quran and the Sunnah, that is sufficient for us. So obviously, my dear Muslims, the deen must be studied comprehensively. And it's important we study this aspect of Islam, of marriage, because first and foremost, obviously, it is a part of Islam. And it's something that majority of us will engage in at some point in our life, at least once, usually at least once. So it's important we know about its rules, etc. Firstly, a marriage is something highly recommended in Islam. It's something highly recommended in Islam between men and women. And I'm reading, these are notes I received myself from a student of Shaykh Umar Bakr Muhammad. Allah protect him and preserve him and free him. And some things I added myself. So in the original notes it said here, marriage is highly recommended in Islam with men and women, and are encouraged to marry if they are able. And I had to put in with men and women, and in brackets only. There's no such thing as marriage between men and men or women and women. This is batil, this is rejected. This is a form of zina. And obviously nowadays in here in Dar al-Kufr, where it's like anything goes. You know, they call it civil partnership. So they don't want to recognize it as marriage because obviously it sounds ridiculous. But so they call it civil partnership. I know many people are actually pushing for it to be recognized as marriage. But this will, under Islam, this will never be recognized as marriage. This is someone who says that this is a valid type of marriage as is doing zandaqa, is being a heretic. So obviously no such thing as marriage like this, only between men and women. And marriage is something that is we are encouraged in Islam to marry as soon as we are able. So i.e. somewhere in the physically mature, and for example, a man is capable of supporting a wife. So there's no such thing as having relationship before maturity, before reaching the age of puberty. And obviously, my dear Muslims, boys and girls, they mature at different ages. Generally, the girls, they tend to mature, reach the age of puberty more earlier than boys. So it can happen any time from around, from 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, etc. And this obviously has implications, because after a child reaches puberty, certain things will become a duty upon them, whereas if they don't do it, they will be sinful. So we're encouraged to tell our children to, for example, to tell them to pray at the age of 7 from the hadith. And by the age of 10, if they don't pray, to discipline them. But obviously, we know from the hadith, the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ told us about 3 people which the pen is lifted from them. The person who's immature until they reach maturity, i.e. the person who is not mature until they reach puberty, their deeds are not recorded. And the one who's insane until he gains sanity. And the one who's unconscious or asleep until he regains conscious. So obviously for the child is not accountable. But once they reach the age of puberty, if they don't pray, if they don't fast and they have to fast, they will be sinful. And so why we mention this, obviously after the age of puberty, people can get married and have relationship. So for example, let's say for example, a girl, she maybe reached the age of puberty at the age of 10. And maybe at the age of 12, she wants to get married. She's not been forced. She's found a good boy, and all the conditions are met. For example, there are 2 witnesses. She has wali amr, etc., dowry. Under Islamic law, she can get married. Now, obviously, there's some people who probably kafir who hearing this who are thinking, that's not right. In Islam, as we talk many times, what is right and what is wrong, what is halal and what is haram, what is legal and what is illegal is defined by Allah, by our Creator. It's not decided by your whims and desires. What you feel is right, what you feel is wrong, what you feel should be allowed and what shouldn't be allowed. That's why those people, as I tweeted recently, democracy is the deen of those people who want to follow their own desires. Our deen, our laws in Islam are not made by the people. It is divine law, it is sent down by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And that is why as Muslims, we don't believe in the democracy system. We do not believe in this system where the people make the laws. The people set the limits. The people set the boundaries. The people decide what should be halal and what should be haram. So, and that's why you see in those countries where democracy is adopted, you see many corruption. Many things that are harmful for mankind have become legal, from the pornography, from the alcohol to the gambling. In some cases, in some parts of the countries of the world, cannabis is legal. All kinds of corruption have become legal because man decides that he thinks he knows what is best for himself instead of following what his Creator has commanded him. So obviously in Islam, my dear Muslims, as I mentioned, let's say for example a 12-year-old girl wants you to marry an 18-year-old man, and with offer and acceptance, etc., and the wali, her guardian, is happy and she's happy, she's not being forced. Under Islamic law there is no sin upon them. And obviously here in the UK, in the kufr law, they don't accept this. They say under UK law, I believe you can get married at the age of 16 with the consent of your parents, and at the age of 18 you can get married without any consent. So, and one thing, obviously, those people who are maybe gasping at getting married at the age of 12, getting married at the age of 14, etc. You go look around in many parts of the world, and many other customs and civilizations, people marry at all different ages.
I mean, the boy can be younger than the girl in some cases, isn't it?
Yes.
So it's not always that the girl's younger than the boy.
Yes, that's right. A brother just mentioned it's not always has to be the case that the girl has to be younger than the boy. This is another. Sadly, some people have this misconception. Even the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, when he got first married to his first wife, they say he was around 40 years old. He was around 25 years old, and his wife was 40. You see, so this issue that you cannot marry a woman older than you, there's no basis for this in Islam. So as we mentioned, so the age of consent of marriage is 16 in the UK. And so if someone says, oh look, in this particular country, they can get married at 14. So someone will be like, no, that's not right. Yeah, but they follow a different set of laws. They have a different culture there. Who are you to dictate, oh, this is wrong? So in the UK, you can get married at 16 with consent, but in other parts of the world, you can only get married at 18. So they might be looking at the UK thinking, what are these people doing? They're getting married at 16, that's not right. And you're looking at someone else in some other part of the world, they get married at 14, you're saying, oh, that's not right. And this is the problem with the kuffar. They want to dictate to other people that we are the ones, we are like the torchbearers, we set what is good and bad. We think democracy is the best thing since sliced bread. So we believe you should have it and we're going to bomb you into accepting it. But the Muslims, they don't want democracy. They want to worship Allah, they want to fear Allah and worship Him and follow His laws. And this is why they go around trying to force democracy in the lands of the Muslims. So coming back, obviously, my dear Muslims, who set this limit? Who set 16 as only 16 you can get married? Who said that? What's the basis for it? I remember I was speaking to one kafira at the dawah stall, and she was saying, oh look, people should only get married after 16. I said to the ladies, oh, okay, what's the difference between getting married at 15 and getting married at 16? What's the actual difference? Apart from obviously 1 year. She was like, well, but it should be 16. I said, in terms of, nothing's different, i.e., obviously when we said here that obviously after the person becomes mature, they can have relationship, etc. So there is a big difference. After puberty, the girl or the boy's body changes, they become more mature, etc. There actually a difference. So between 15 and 16, there is no difference. But obviously, if you do it at 15, they will say you committed a crime. So obviously, we don't follow our own desires, and we don't follow man-made law. As Muslims, as believers who believe in God Almighty, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we believe only God has the right to tell us what is allowed and what is not allowed. So as we said, it is obviously highly recommended in Islam to get married. And in some cases, it could even become wajib. It could even become wajib in some circumstances where, for example, maybe the person, he has so much temptation to commit zina. Or, for example, he's finding it very, very difficult to lower his gaze, or maybe he can't stop looking at zina. You see, so obviously that type of person, if he's engaging in other sins, this person he should get married as soon as possible. Okay, that was flashing away. Someone said pressing 3. If you're having problems hearing on the Paltalk, first make sure all your volumes are set to maximum on the Paltalk itself and on your own device, on your phone or your laptop. And if you're still having problems, I advise you just to jump out of the room, exit the room, exit Paltalk, and try re-entering, inshallah. That's the best thing I can advise. This particular talk is being recorded and will be available on YouTube later, inshallah. So coming back, there's one hadith, the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, he said that marriage is my sunnah, and whoever avoids my sunnah avoids me. Yeah, so that is the way. In fact, I remember once reading, I think it was in Al-Bidayah wa Nihaya by Ibn Kathir, or Lives of the Prophets. He mentioned that all the prophets, none of them were children of fornication, i.e. outside of marriage or children of adultery. None of the prophets. Obviously with the exception of Adam alayhi salam, because he didn't have prophets. He didn't have parents, sorry. He didn't have parents. And obviously he was the first man Allah created. And also in another hadith, the Prophet Muhammad said, "O young people, those who are able to get married, get married. And if he is unable to do so, he should fast, as this will diminish his desires." So obviously those, maybe they have some circumstance where they're not able to get married, the Prophet ﷺ advised those people to fast, as it will diminish their desires. And I'm sure you can relate to that. If you look, for example, in Ramadan, you don't have strong desires as outside of Ramadan. The fasting is one of those things, it will diminish those desires for relationship. And today, obviously, we have a problem here where, especially amongst the kuffar, they want to push this idea that marriage is somehow irrelevant. It's just somehow, it's not that important. And they say these things because of their own belief and their own culture and their own lifestyle. Because obviously in marriage, we believe that's the legitimate way of a man and woman having a relationship. And this is the legitimate way only to have children. But they think, I can just commit zina with a woman and fulfill my desires? Why do I need to get married? I can just, sleep with her and have a child from her without getting married. So what's the point of marriage? And this is why you see amongst the kuffar that the fornication, the illegitimate children is so rife. And many of them, they don't get married. They've been, a man and woman been living together for like 20 years. They've got children and they're not married. What is going on? He feels there's no need. You just see his marriage as just signing a piece of paper. Obviously these people, they do not fear Allah. They don't understand the consequences. They don't understand they must obey Allah's commands. They cannot do as they please. And many people, that's how they belittle this marriage. And that's why it's even some kuffar who non-Muslims who still have some fear of God and some morality still left in them. They see that how marriage is a good institution and it needs to be upheld and is better than the other side of just having relationship outside of marriage and having children outside of marriage. And obviously, my dear Muslims, we do not want to become like the kuffar. So may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala save us from becoming like them. In fact, marriage itself is seen as an act of worship, and every act of fulfillment between a husband and wife is charity. It is narrated by Anas radiallahu ta'ala an. He narrated that the Messenger Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam said, "When a man is married, he has fulfilled half of his deen. So let him fear Allah regarding the other half." And also in another hadith, another beautiful hadith, narrated by Abu Dhar radiallahu ta'ala an, he said that some people are from amongst the companions of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam said that the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, "O Messenger of Allah," they said to him, "O Messenger of Allah, the rich people will get more reward. They pray as we pray. They fast as we fast. But they give charity from their excess wealth." And so then the Prophet ﷺ said, "Has not Allah given you things that which you can give charity?" He said, "Every tasbih, i.e. saying Subhanallah, is charity. Every takbir, i.e. saying Allahu Akbar, is charity. Every tahmeed, saying Alhamdulillah, is charity. And every tahleel, saying La ilaha illallah, there is none worthy of worship but Allah, is charity. Enjoining what is good is charity. Forbidding what is evil is charity. And having intercourse is charity." And obviously when the Sahaba, they heard this, they said, "O Messenger of Allah, if one fulfills his desires, is there reward for that?" And the Prophet ﷺ said, "Do you not see that if he does it in a haram way, he will have the burden of sin? So if he does it in a halal way, he will have the reward for that." So obviously if the man, if to fulfill his desires by committing zina or prostitute, something like this, obviously he will get sin. So if he does it in a halal way, approaching his own wife, and owning the matter in the way Allah permitted, maybe seeking some pious children, etc. from it, he will be rewarded by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And usually I don't bother putting in the reference, because some of those hadiths which are famous, well-known, authentic hadith, but this one, I don't know, for some reason I had to put in the reference for this. Okay, so some people feel like, I'm just going to tell you the reference. It's in Muslim 1674, inshallah. Also, my dear Muslims, marriage is regarded as a companionship between men and women, as opposed to partnership. The objective of marriage is twofold. First, to enjoy the company of the member of the opposite gender. And the second, to have children, thereby guaranteeing the continuity of the human race. Now obviously normally a random man and a woman, they cannot normally free mix and have khalwa, have privacy between themselves, and for example touch each other, have relationship with each other, is normally not allowed. But the marriage is one of those things that will give them the permit to do this, you see. So normally, as we say, men and women, they don't chit chat and free mix with each other. But the marriage, what normally was not allowed before between a man and woman, the marriage will make that permissible between them. And also obviously we said one of the purposes of the marriage is to have children. Yeah. So I find it very ajib. Some people they get married and they decide, we're not going to have children. It's very strange. This is very common amongst the kuffar. And obviously, as we mentioned, marriage is the legitimate way of having children. There's no such thing as, look, we can just commit zina and have children, so it's okay. And so you cannot have children outside of marriage. So like for someone, he can't just approach a prostitute or some woman because he has the desire to have children. Rather, obviously, he must get married. Nowadays, you have these ajib situations, like here in the UK, where they have these things called sperm banks. When a woman, she has the desire to have children, but rather than getting married, they have these evil places called sperm banks where you can buy a sperm, and the woman can have children like this. She has no idea, she never met the man in her life. This is obviously a very, very evil practice, and this is not allowed. So you cannot have children outside of marriage. Okay? And I put here the exception to this. The exception is the sabi. Obviously, I don't know if anyone here who's got sabi. But obviously, if someone had a sabi, and obviously it was permitted for them to have relationship, and they had children by it, would be attributed to the father, and it would not be regarded as an illegitimate child. Which nowadays, this issue has become very controversial. Obviously, you need to study the deen. If it's the haqq, we accept it. We don't follow our own desires and what we feel is right and wrong. We don't allow the kuffar to dictate to us what is good and bad. Also, the contract of marriage is called the nikah. The contract of marriage is called the nikah. And it is a contract between a man and woman of which all the conditions must be fulfilled for it to be correct and valid. So for example, just quickly go through some of these. There must be offer and acceptance. So there must be offer and acceptance. Usually the girl's guardian, the wali amr, he'll make the offer and to the man who's getting married, and he'll accept. And so there must be this offer and acceptance. There's no such thing as, the girl didn't know she's been married. The father comes home, oh, by the way, you just got married. What? Or forced. The girl is forced to marry someone who she does not like, or she does not want to get married to. This is not from al-Islam. Also, there must be no compulsion. Obviously I mentioned there must be no force. So obviously it must be something willingly do it. So no such thing as, someone's getting married, he just for a visa, or married for a passport. Yeah, this is not allowed. You must be married. And some people it's very evil. They just get married for the sake of getting a visa or coming to the UK or whatever, and then just get divorced. Obviously, this is not a marriage. It's supposed to be marriage is one of those contracts which doesn't have a time limit. It doesn't have a time limit. It's a lifelong contract. There's no limit, unless obviously you're the evil Shia and you're doing temporary marriages. Obviously, this has been abrogated. There's no such thing as married for 1 day, or married for 7 days, etc. Also, obviously, there must be 2 witnesses, and there must be wali amr, the girl, the bride, she must have a guardian. Usually it is the father, first and foremost. But then, obviously, if maybe her father's not passed, her father maybe passed away, and it could go down to the uncles. The uncle maybe passed away, no uncles, etc. It could be, for example, her brothers, etc. If there's no brothers, for example, it could even be like a trustworthy member in the community, like an imam, for example. But generally, it's the first and foremost is the father. Obviously, he must be Muslim as well. It's very important. And in one hadith, the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ said, "There is no marriage except with wali." Yeah, so there's no marriage without the wali amr. So that's why there's no such thing. The girl, she just got married, and the father does not know nothing about it. We must inform the father. Also, obviously, another thing of the marriage, there should be something called a mahar, a dowry. Yeah. So then that doesn't necessarily have to be money, like cash. Usually people give money, but it could be other stuff. Like, for example, it could be set amount of gold. It could be set amount of land for an orchard, for example. And this is obviously usually given from the man to the woman. There's no such thing as dowry from the woman to the man. This is Asian culture. Yeah. Now in Asian culture, you have this thing where it's completely reverse, where the girl wants to get married and she has to give all this stuff to the husband, and they request as well. Oh, I want 5-piece leather sofa. We want a motorcycle for him as well.
Flat screen TV.
And the flat screen TV, and list all these things. To the extent where people now, they can't get their daughters married. They're thinking, I have to give all this stuff. They don't have to give nothing. The fact that they're giving their daughter, they're giving more than what the boy is giving. Yeah. So this is not from Al-Islam. Also, the man and the woman must not be mahram to each other. This is obviously ABC. So, for example, father cannot marry his own daughter. A blood brother cannot marry a blood sister. Obviously, this is not allowed. And we know the famous incident where, at the time of Yahya alayhi salam, who was the Prophet of Allah, where the king, he wanted to marry his own niece. And obviously Yahya alayhi salam, he forbade. He said, obviously, this is not allowed. And he was obviously killed because of that. And so those people who you are mahram to, it is not allowed for you to marry each other. Also, the woman is not allowed to marry in her iddah period, which is known as the waiting period. So, like, for example, if her husband has divorced her, etc., she will have to wait a certain amount of time. Or if the husband passes away, she would have to wait a certain amount of time before she can get married again. And obviously, both the man and woman, they must be eligible for marriage. So a woman cannot get married if she's already married to another man. Yeah. And obviously, she must be sane. She must be sane to get married. I remember when Sheikh Anjum, he talked about this issue about, we started fiqh, usul al-fiqh. Hanafis have this opinion that if the man is sane and the woman is insane, that Hanafis believe they can get married. Because the man, he has the authority in the marriage. But I believe the Sheikh Hanjum said the strongest opinion that if she's insane, she cannot get involved in the marriage contract. And also, a Muslim woman must only marry a Muslim man. And it is forbidden for her to marry a man with any other belief. However, it is permitted for a Muslim man to also marry a Muslim woman or a woman from the people of the book, i.e. a Jewish woman or a Christian woman, provided that she is chaste and she's unmarried. Yeah? And nowadays it's very hard to find a Jewish and a Christian woman who's chaste and unmarried. Well, you can find it unmarried, but chaste is subhanAllah. And even on this issue, my dear Muslim, I want to just say something, a word of warning. Or even though Allah SWT gave that permit, that is mubah, for a Muslim man to marry a Christian woman or a Jewish woman, in Darul Kufr, I don't advise anyone to do this. Because there's one thing you need to understand. When you understand, look, this is the Islamic ruling, along with that you need to understand the reality. So you need to put, so here you've got to understand, you're living in Darul Kufr where the laws of Allah is not implemented. You get married to a Christian woman, let's say for example divorce takes place. The British courts, so you're going to give your kids, if you have children, to her. And maybe half of all your wealth as well. So you're going to run off back to her Christian mother and bring them up as Christians. This would not happen under Darul Islam if you were married to a Christian woman. If you were to leave, the children would stay with the father. You see. Now obviously, and I've heard many cases where like this, Muslim brothers have married Christian women and some problem happened, and they've taken his kids and they're bringing them up to be Christians and worship the cross, worship Jesus. So obviously bear this in mind in your reality. And obviously the kufr courts, they don't look at what the Sharia says. They judge by their own man-made laws. And there's a verse in the Quran here, Surah Al-Ma'idah, verse 5. Lawful unto you in marriage are only those chaste women who are believers, but chaste women from amongst the people of the book revealed before your time, when you give them their due dowry and desire chastity, not lewdness or secret. It says secret intrigues. This is posh English, i.e. they're not prostitutes. Yeah. So within the framework of marriage, the Sharia has defined the different roles and duties for men and women have, and they complement each other perfectly, such as the life between man and woman is fulfilled with harmony and tranquility. One of the conditions of marriage is that the partner must not be from the forbidden categories of maharim. Yep. So this for example, the mahram of the man. So who is the mahram for the man? His mother, the wives of his father, his two grandmothers, his daughters, his granddaughters, his sister. Huh? He's the mahram, yeah. He's the mahram to all of them. His sister, his paternal and maternal aunts. So like his mother's sister, his father's sister. His great aunts, his nieces, his wife's mothers, his wife's mother, so mother-in-law, his mother by breastfeeding, and their mothers, and the daughters and his sisters by breastfeeding. So all of these, he cannot marry any of them and is mahram to them. Yeah, and the mahram of the women is basically the opposite of this. Yeah, it's basically the opposite. And in all cases, it is forbidden for marriage to occur between them. However, it is permitted for them to mix freely in private and public areas. And this mixing can be for the purpose given above, as long as the nature of the mixing does not transgress what Allah SWT has laid down in the Sharia. And if you want to look at these categories, Allah SWT, look at the verse in Surah An-Nisa, verse 23. It mentions all of these maharim, inshallah. But in this particular verse, I'll read it out to you quickly in the translation. It says, forbidden unto you, your mothers, your daughters, your sisters, your father's sisters, your mother's sister, and your sister's daughters, your foster mothers, your foster sisters, and your mother-in-law and your stepdaughter who is under your protection of the woman unto whom you have gone in. But if you have not gone unto them, there is no sin for you, to marry their daughters. And the wives of your own sons, from sons who spring from your own loins, i.e. your daughter-in-law, and it is forbidden unto you that you should marry two sisters together, except what has already happened of that nature in the past, and Allah is ever forgiving and most merciful. So the sister-in-law of a man cannot be married to him whilst he's still married to his sister, or to her sister. So two sisters, you cannot be married to them at the same time. Yeah. However, despite this, he cannot mix freely with his sister-in-law as he can with other mahram. Similarly, the woman cannot freely mix with her brother-in-law. So there's a misconception people have. They say that anyone who's a mahram, you cannot marry. And that's not strictly correct. Because there's an example. For example, as you said, you cannot marry your sister-in-law while you're still married to her sister. But for example, let's say your wife passes away, then it would be permitted to you marry the girl who was your sister, your wife's sister. So obviously, but before then you cannot, and you cannot be mahram for her, but you cannot obviously marry her as well. So, and you cannot free mix with your sister-in-law, and the girl cannot free mix with her brother-in-law. It's narrated one hadith, the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ said, "Do not go near women when they are alone." A man from the Ansar said, "What about the husband's elder brother and younger brothers?" The Messenger Muhammad ﷺ said, "Intimacy with them is to be avoided as death." So basically he's saying, for the man, his sister-in-laws, his wife's sisters. Obviously they're saying, first of all, a man should enter a gathering of women. And obviously the man's asking about, what about the sister-in-law? And the Prophet was saying in this hadith, he's saying that she is like death. It is so dangerous to, even more so, being close to this particular person. And the Prophet described it like death. You see, so there's no such thing as like, oh, this is just my sister-in-law, and we're just chatting together, and we're having khalwa together. This is not allowed, and this is very, very dangerous, and what it could lead down to the extent, I believe the Sheikh said this once. Wallah can correct me. He said, I believe in a talk, he goes, this is not the brother-in-law. This is the brother in death, or sister in death. So be very careful, my dear Muslims. Just briefly go through the rights and duties within marriage. There's a verse in Surah An-Nisa, verse 64, where Allah says, "Men are protectors and maintainers of women because Allah has given one of them more strength than the other, and because they support them from their means. And therefore the righteous women, they are devoutly obedient and guard what Allah would have them guard." So they guard their husband's property and his children, etc. Look after them. So obviously Allah mentioned here, because Allah has been given one more strength than the other. You see, some people like those people who are like very banging on the equality drum. They straight away come criticizing this. And I just, when I was reading this, I just thought of this example. Let's say a husband and wife are just walking down the road, and I don't know, some danger just jumps out in front of them. Like some lion, for example. Usually it's the woman that will run behind the man, expecting him to be at the forefront to protect her. You see, because that's your nature. He's the man. He's the one, with the more strength and the, and obviously, subhanallah. Yeah, you see, even you see that around you. So it's not a case of saying, i.e. that women are less, in terms of they're not courageous or, but you see, like I said, this is the natural thing you have. The man, someone could come into your house, the man would be the one at the front with a baseball bat or whatever, or with a double barrel shotgun. It's not usually the woman's gonna say, look, there's a man who's coming to the house, and she would expect him to go first. But obviously, unless obviously the man is a wimp, or she's been injecting like too much testosterone. She'll be like, don't worry, I'll deal with it, you know. So, there's one beautiful hadith from Abdullah ibn Umar. He narrated that the Messenger Muhammad ﷺ said, each one of you is a guardian and is responsible for his subject. The ruler is a guardian over the people, and the man is a guardian over the members of his household. And the woman is a guardian and responsible for her husband's house and his offspring. And so each of you is a guardian and is responsible for his subjects. So everybody, obviously, my dear Muslims, has responsibility, you know, to look. The house will be an authority over, you know, people. The ruler, for example, over the people, the man over his wife and his children, etc. The woman, you know, in the husband's absence, you know, over his home and his children, etc. And the man's obviously duty is to provide everything that she needs, and the woman does not have to spend a single penny. Yeah, even if she's very rich and wealthy, she don't have to spend a single penny of her own money in the marriage. It is the man's role to provide food, clothing and shelter. And obviously in return, the woman would obey her husband, would cook and clean, etc., look after his children. She would not leave his home without his permission. This is in brief, this is an introduction really more so to marriage. Obviously the topic itself is very big, and there's many other things you can study around it regarding to how to choose a good spouse, the sunnah way of having a wedding, the rights of husband and wife, and inshallah if Allah gives us tawfiq, we can discuss those in the future. This actually, obviously the topic advertised was marriage and engagement. Engagement is actually another set of talks. I'm only coming on to engagement now. I don't know how long I've been speaking so far. We should be okay as we only have 2 speakers for today. So inshallah, coming on to the issue of engagement in Islam. Engagement is a term used in society to mean that one has a fiancé, that one eventually intends to marry. Now the first and foremost thing, my dear Muslims, we need to understand is there is a huge difference between engagement in the mind of the kafir and engagement in the mind of the Muslim, and what Islam says. There is a huge difference, and to each of them they have a different understanding of what engagement is. In the Western world, engagement can last for many years, and sometimes there's no definite fixed date of marriage, and in more and more cases no date at all. So, you know, a man and woman just decide, you know, okay, we're engaged. Okay, engaged. When you plan to get married, we haven't decided yet. Yeah, and 2 years have gone, 3 years have gone, we're still engaged. You see, the nikah is one of those things the Prophet advised not to delay. Some people have been married for like 5 years. I mean, not married, engaged for many years. The engagement thing is supposed to be a very short, temporary thing before obviously the main marriage. And during engagement, many people, they end up free mixing. And to the extent they even end up having sexual relationship. They feel in their mind, they think, oh look, we're engaged, we're going to get married anyway very soon, so therefore it don't make no difference. This is completely rejected, this is completely incorrect. I know it happens amongst the kuffar, but Islam does not allow this. And there is no surprise, however, as in so-called civilized society today, people have obviously a relationship with anything and everything, and let alone fiancé in the norm, leading to many sexual diseases. So obviously, as I mentioned, someone, you know, you may be engaged, but you're not husband and wife yet. You're not husband and wife yet, because marriage is a contract, and someone could pull out before the contract is done. So you kind of have in your mind that, look, we're going to get married anyway. You never know, something might happen, and the marriage doesn't go ahead. Maybe the person you was going to be engaged to passed away. You see, but you've already had relationship and everything. And on this note, subhanallah, it mentions obviously how the illicit relationship, the fornication, it will lead to many evil diseases. And as one hadith, the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ said, if fornication and adultery become widespread, then know that this has never happened without new diseases befalling the people, which their forefathers never had. Today, subhanallah, you see the amount of diseases in the world. Even now they're talking about this Zika virus in South America. When I read this hadith, I immediately think about the AIDS.
Yeah.
Something that people never had 200-300 years ago. There's no such thing as AIDS. This is one of those modern diseases come about because of people's fornication. And that's what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He will afflict people when adultery and fornication become rife in society. You'll see these new diseases coming out, which people never used to have before. It's completely new disease. As a punishment from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that maybe the people will take heed and they will stop their sinful behavior and come back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And obviously, as you mentioned, my dear Muslims, the zina, fornication, and it obviously can happen. Even relationship before marriage is a form of zina. Adultery is another form of zina. Homosexuality is another form of zina. And you see, especially those who live in Dar al-Kufr, you see how the zina is rife, and it leads to so many problems, so many breakdowns of family, so many unwanted pregnancies, illegitimate children. And obviously all of these things, they cause chain reaction, they cause problems further down the line. A child who's grown up with no father, he has no father figure in his life. So what? His father becomes 50 cents. His role model becomes 50 cents now. He doesn't have no father. So, his mother, maybe she had some one night stand, some committed zina. She doesn't even know she can't even tell the child who their father is. What kind of respect and honor he's going to have for his own mother that gave birth to him? You see many problems happen, and these children, they end up looking for other people as their role models because the absence of a father and disrespect for their own mother. So as I mentioned, engagement does not have the meaning of commitment as people falsely believe. So many people have made engagement as it's just like a trial run, couple's relation prior to marriage. And that's why people, that period of where they engage, they don't take it seriously. That look, we're going to get married. We have partially committed ourselves to each other. But people just say, well, look, technically we're not married, so they will go off and do all kinds of other haram, and they will have affairs, etc. And will be with other people. And subhanallah, when I was thinking about this, and you see amongst the kuffar, they have this thing called stag nights and hen parties. Basically, it's like, look, we've been doing all this haram and zina, but now we're going to get married, so we have to kind of stop. But look, we have one more last day to do all this haram before we get married, so let's just, and they do, the woman will do haram and the man will do haram, and or think, well, I'm getting married tomorrow, so I'm going to have to stop it all. So it's okay.
One
last time, whatever. And even then, after they get married, many they end up because they all live their whole life as a life of zina. They become addicted to zina. So when they get married, how they find it very difficult to be loyal. You see, and especially when the law, the kufr man-made law, it restricts, for example, things like polygamy. You see. So obviously this is, subhanallah, like I said, the understanding of engagement, we need to take it from what Islam says is engagement, and what's allowed and not allowed. Don't look towards the kuffar, because their idea of engagement is something completely different. And sadly, obviously, many Muslims, unfortunately, have adopted this concept of engagement. They have adopted this concept of engagement. Why? Because they never studied their own deen. They never studied engagement. They don't know what engagement is, what you can and can't do. And some people, they have this disease, they're always looking towards the kuffar. What are they doing? And they're just adopting that. And obviously in Islam, when sometimes you see a Muslim couple, they get engaged, and they do many stuff which is not from Islam. A lot of it is just picking up things which the kuffar used to do and imitating them. And some brothers there will relate that amongst the Bengali community, they have this thing called sinifan. I'm sure some people will recognize it, and they have these big parties. Or some of them might be just got engaged, and they're going to throw a big party, men and women, everyone going to come, spending huge amounts of money as well. The same money, this is like just a party. There's no need for it. People are spending tens and thousands of pounds hiring big venues and stuff for it. And obviously, and together with these rituals adopted from the Western society and non-Islamic cultures. So sometimes, people who come from a certain part of the world, and they have certain cultural stuff. But these cultural things are forbidden from Islam. It's your culture. It's not from Islam. Yeah? And as a result, they end up doing many haram things, even though it's not from Islam. So they throw many of these parties also, again, involving free mixing and other prohibited things in Islam. Some people, they have it in their mind that wedding and marriage, it's like this is the one day you don't have to fear Allah. It's like the one day you can just, you have the green light to do as much haram you like. Because you get married, isn't it? It's a happy occasion. You don't need to worry about fearing Allah today. And people will just go and they will free mix, and they will play music in their weddings. The bride, she'll come out exposed in front of all the men. Sometimes they take her to the men's side so everyone can ogle her, check her out. What is this? This is not allowed. And many people you see as well in the times of when they're getting married as well, many people just completely disregard for the salah. It's like, this happy occasion we get married, and you see people, you think like salah time, you still need to pray. I know you get married, but you still need to pray. You still, subhanallah. And so many things, they just, especially even more so on that day, goes out the window. And obviously, as I mentioned, my dear Muslims, just because people, they may be engaged because they've agreed that we're happy to get married, they start thinking that it gives the green light to free mix. Oh look, we're going to get married anyway. Let's go out for a meal. Let's go on a date. This is not allowed. I know the kuffar do that, but you are a Muslim, and Islam does not allow you to do that. Can't be like, oh look, we're engaged now. We're going to get married very soon, inshallah. Can't we just, every night on the phone, talking to each other, how's things, etc. And some people, even to the extent, they engage in physical relationship, and they don't see nothing wrong with it, because they see, oh look, like the kuffar thing, we're going to get married anyway. But this is still, if you do that, you're still committing zina. This will not be allowed. So like I said, when Muslims get engaged, they feel it's like it gives the permit for them to socialize and to free mix. They are falsely believing that is legitimate now that they are engaged. Obviously, my dear Muslim, in Islam we have a concept of engagement. But the key thing is it's not like the kuffar, how they regarding engagement. The only way a man and a woman can share intimate relationship emotionally and physically is through the contract of nikah, of marriage. And obviously this article will examine the Islamic understanding of engagement and the divine rules relating to it. Now, the definition of engagement in Islam is a private arrangement with the intention of marriage between a suitable man and a woman via her guardian, her wali amr. That is the definition of engagement in Islam. So, and now to explain this, so it is a private arrangement, means it's unbinding secret agreement. And to a suitable Muslim man, it means he must be Muslim, he must be mature, and he must be sane. And to a suitable woman, means the woman must be obviously Muslim, or from a woman from the people of the book, i.e. a Jew or Christian, and she must be free for marriage, and without any Sharia prevention. For example, she cannot already be married to another man. She can't be on her iddah, her waiting period, following divorce or like separation, or husband passed away, or also she can't be pregnant. She cannot engage in a marriage contract if she's pregnant. Now this is very important, because one thing, some people, they have this thing in their mind, where maybe their daughter or someone they know has committed the crime of zina, relationship outside the marriage, and she's fallen pregnant. And they fear that she's gonna bring, this is shame for the family, and so what they think, let's just quickly get her married, as we'll cover her up. But she's pregnant. This marriage will not be valid. And many people, they get married quickly, so maybe they get married as soon as she finds out they're pregnant, and 9 months down the line, straight away she's had a child. So they try to hide the fact. So people, they think, oh look, this child is just from that man. But this contract, if a woman is pregnant and marriage contract is being done, this contract is invalid. It is invalid contract. Also, where it will be a prevention if she's had relationship with that same man, or if she's a prostitute, or if she's a fornicator, or she's a mushrika, i.e. she's a Hindu or a Sikh woman. It's not allowed for a Muslim man to marry anyone other than a Muslim woman, a Jewish woman, or a Sikh, or a Christian woman. Sikh women, Hindu women, Buddhist women, atheist women, these are not allowed. Obviously, unless if they obviously embrace Islam, then it's different. And also, the marriage that has to be done, the arrangement has to be done with the knowledge of the wali amr. The father must be aware that his daughter is getting married. The father must be informed. Even if maybe, for example, the father might not be happy with it, but he still must be informed. Or even if you think, he's going to hit the roof, the expression we say in the West, he's going to hit the roof, but you still have to tell him. You still have to inform him. And the other thing, you never know, he might not hit the roof. Yeah? Be optimistic. So, but he must be informed. Obviously, if it's a kafir man, then he can't be wali amr for her. And this is one of the problems with the civil court marriages here in the UK. Where's the wali amr? The Prophet ﷺ said there's no nikah without wali amr. You don't need, if you're over 18, etc. You go to a court, the man is there, you're happy to marry him, she's happy, stamp the paper, where's the wali amr? Obviously, this is not valid. This is saying what decides valid and invalid, as I've emphasized many times in my talk, is not what David Cameron says is valid and invalid, or the British UK law, or the United Nations. What is valid and invalid defined by the Sharia. You see, what is valid in the sight of God is what is valid, and what is invalid is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala dictates what is right and wrong. And obviously in the civil courts, you don't have to declare no mahar, nothing. SubhanAllah. So obviously these we don't recognize those civil court marriages. Rather, marriage has to be done according to the rules of the Islam or according to the Sharia. That's what is valid. That's why many Muslims who have been married here in the UK, they had the Islamic marriage with the wali amr, 2 witnesses, the dowry, offering acceptance, and they're happy with that. It's valid. They don't need a stamp book from the Taghut's, civil court marriage bureau or office, whatever. Even I've heard to the extent that one masjid in South London, it has this policy that they'll refuse to conduct the marriage unless you go and have a civil marriage certificate. What's going on? What's this? Obviously, if it's a case of my dear Muslims, like, let's for example, someone, he needs to travel internationally, and let's for the Islamic document is not recognized. In that instance, you can go to the civil court just to get a certificate to reinforce that he's married, for the sake of something like international travel, unless you can prove that you're husband and wife, for example. But if someone got married in the proper Islamic rules, that is because a legitimate marriage, and you don't need a certificate from the local marriage thingy to say that is. Even myself, when I got married, subhanAllah, this a woman at the one of these civil offices says, like, well, we don't recognize your marriage. I said, look, I had an Islamic marriage, and look, this is it. Yeah, she was like, yeah, I know, but in the British thingy, we don't recognize it. So they regard, subhanAllah, as basically what they call living in sin, having relation outside the marriage. I said to the lady at the time, I said, you don't regard me and my wife as married, but yet if 2 men were to come in today, you'd give them a civil partnership, you recognize them. So obviously, this is the kufr man-made laws and their customs and their way of life. Also, during the period when a Muslim male, he proposes to a suitable female with the consent of her guardian, and she agrees to consider him for marriage, the couple are under an engagement Islamically, and the female is not allowed to consider any other man until she decides to decline the proposal. Yeah? So if a man has approached her for marriage and she's happy with it, she cannot just like, well, okay, I've got this one on the bag, It's just, if anyone, I'll keep my, I'll keep my hand open or whatever. If there's, just in case someone better comes along. So if someone else is inquiring for marriage, she cannot entertain that. If she has to, either the first one, she has to break that off, basically, before she considers someone else for marriage. It can't be just, just have a few cards in my hand, if you like, the term they use. It's not allowed. So she must either, if she wants to consider another man, she must decline the other one that she has. And similarly, if you know a woman who is engaged for marriage, you cannot approach that woman. You cannot just come along like, yeah, I think I'm better than him. Look, consider me. And undercut your brother. I'm a better man than him. No, if she reject this, that other, if she turns, for whatever reason, she turns down the one she was intending to get married to, then you can approach her. Yeah. So, as we said, engagement, it does not allow any grounds for socializing or private meetings. The man cannot go out with her, the man can go out with her as long as it is a matter related to the preparation for the marriage and with the accompaniment, as long as they're with her mahram. I, like for example, her father, or her uncle, etc., or a brother. So if they do need to meet, they must do so in the presence of the mahram, and strictly to discuss Islam or the preparations for marriage, and not for the purpose of entertainment. Yeah, so they can meet up, but not just by themselves. The mahram has to be there present, and we don't use your ration thinking, I don't see a point of that, we're going to get married anyway. No, the mahram is there to protect the woman. She said the mahram is the guardian for the woman. She always has to look out for her well-being, and her honor obviously is not violated. So the mahram has to be there. There's no such thing as, oh, we're going to get married, we'll just go off ourselves and choose our wedding stuff, etc., and do everything. In addition, they are not allowed to be alone together in a room. This is known as khalwa, and it is haram. Yeah. So khalwa is like a private place where no one can see. A man and woman, in general, because you're not husband and wife yet. If you're husband and wife, then yes, you can. But you're not husband and wife. You're engaged, okay, but it still does not give you. So you could need to look at yourself. You're almost like as if you're just two random man and woman still. Obviously, you have some permit to do some stuff if your mahram is there. But even then, it must be strictly with issues related, because you have to decide some make marriage arrangements. And obviously, physical contact between the couple is not allowed while it's engaged. However, they are allowed to speak to each other on the phone with the father's permission and have conversation, but it must be restricted to discussing Islam or the preparations for the marriage. And obviously, sexual relationship is prohibited, and to even speak about it, this is not allowed except with hukum shari, a divine law. Yeah. So generally, if you're engaged, you cannot speak about sexual matters, etc., except if there's a divine permit for it. Now, when I was thinking about that, what example I can give? Let's say, for example, the woman, she has an exceptionally long period of her menses, her haid. So, and it's considerably much longer than the average. So let's say, for example, on average, a woman is on a haid for 8 days. So obviously, the man cannot have relations with his wife during that period. But let's say, for example, the woman who's intending to get married, she has some abnormal length where she may be on her menses for 20 days, for example. So that is something, he could ask about, because obviously the man, he will not be able to have relationships. So he maybe feel like, look, this is, I don't know, too long for me. So he could ask about something like this. And I remember once Sheikh Faisal was talking about Allah bless him. You see, there's a way of asking stuff. Someone could just come up, pop the question, as they say, and just say, look, how long is your menses? But the way Sheikh Faisal, he described as the better way of asking is, how many days do you miss in Ramadan?
Oh.
You see?
Yeah.
So it's a more of a more shy and a better way of asking, you see. So obviously in Ramadan, the woman would usually miss a few days because of her menses, her haid. And so obviously some of the things that I mentioned here, the things that you can't do. And this has very big implications, especially nowadays. You have these things, marriage websites, Muslim marriage websites, where people are putting up their pictures. I don't know how it's working now. People may be interacting with each other, no wali amr or nothing. You see, people just having full-on conversation. You got to remember, the online thing is still public. You got to look at it like as if you're outside. It's still public. So to be putting up your picture, for millions of people to see, and a man contact a woman and they're having conversation with each other, etc. He would not be allowed to do like this. But if a man was interested in marrying a woman, he would have to inquire via, like the wali amr. You see. So obviously be careful of these websites, and I wouldn't advise people putting up their photos and stuff like this on these things. Also, inshallah, trying to multitask here. Have we still got sound on Paltalk? I haven't checked the Paltalk for a while. Okay, Jazakallah khair. I hope I'm not boring you. It's taking a bit longer than I expected. Also, it is permissible, however, for a man to see the woman without her wearing her khimar, i.e. her headscarf, and her jilbab, her outer garment, as long as she is covering her hard awra. I.e. that means like her from her chest all the way to her knees. There's something called hard awra, and there's something called soft awra. And there's a similar thing for the man. There's something called hard awra and something called the soft awra. So the woman will be from her chest down to her knees. That is regarded as a hard awra. And even when going to see a potential wife, the man cannot see the hard awra. Even our own father cannot see her hard awra, etc. But what this is saying here is, if you're looking at her as a potential wife, if you go and see her, you can see her without her qimar and without her jilbab, but her hard awra must be covered from her chest to her knees. And it's allowed for him to look at her properly with at her eyes, her face, her hair, her arms and hands. Now this should be obviously also, my dear Muslims, is after maybe you've inquired about the person and you've known everything you want to know. The only thing now is like you just want to check the person. No point, first thing, there's a person, you want to get married, you just go and you check everything out. And then, she's too short, she's too tall. You could have found out before, rather than going and looking at her aura and everything. Or she's I don't know, she's from Pakistan, maybe she's got some asabi or whatever. He wants a Bengali wife. Or I don't know, she's something else that you could easily check before, and rather than, it shouldn't be the first port of call that you go and see the woman without her khimar and jilbab. It's narrated by Abdullah ibn Umar that the Prophet a man came to the Prophet and said, I need to get married. How much can I look at her? And the Prophet said, until you are convinced. And in another narration he said, whoever saw a woman for the purpose of marriage and then he changed his mind, let him not speak about it to others. Yeah? So if you saw a woman without her khimar and jilbab for the sake of marriage, but later, let's say for example, he changed his mind, he should not go around then describing that woman to others. Keep it to himself. And also, there's another example here. At the time of the Prophet ﷺ, one Sahaba, he wanted to get married to a woman. And the Prophet said to him ﷺ, that, did you see her? He said no. So he was willing to get married to her without seeing her. Maybe he liked some other qualities about her, he just thought, that's good enough, I'm not too bothered if she's not. I don't know, or I'm sure she'll be alright, you know. But the Prophet ﷺ told her to go look at her. So a man should be happy with the woman's appearance. Yeah. So that's why it is makruh, is a dislike to marry a woman without looking at her. So obviously you're going to spend the rest of your life with her. You need to have some pleased with the way she appears to you. Not be afterwards like, just, what they say, blind marriage, So obviously, and you should have obviously some kind of attraction to each other. So if we combine the evidences, we can conclude that a would-be husband is allowed to see more than the face and hands, but not the hard awra, which the father is not even allowed to see. The majority of the ulama in the past, they held this opinion. However, the woman does not need to give consent for this and is under no obligation to do so. So if she actually refuses, she can refuse. Now obviously if the man lives well, I'm not having, I need to see her, I'm not getting married, then so be it. Yeah, so she can actually refuse for that. But obviously it is recommended. Also, there's one clarification here. It's very interesting. There's many people, even I heard this from Sheikh Faisal himself. May Allah bless him, reward him, and protect him from the hands of the Tawagheed. There's an opinion of Ibn Hazm, who was a great scholar of Islam from Andalus, from Spain, which is one of the ones when the Muslims used to be part of Muslim territory. One day, inshallah, again it will be. Ibn Hazm says it's not that one can see all the aura, as some people mistakenly believe. So I remember one talk I listened to Shaykh Faisal where he said that Ibn Hazm, he had the opinion that when the Prophet said to go see her, that apparently Ibn Hazm said that you can literally see everything. And when I say everything, I mean hard and soft aura. But this is a misconception. Ibn Hazm, apparently he didn't mean it like this. When he said you can see her aura, he meant that obviously you can see her soft aura. He didn't mean like the soft and the hard aura. So you cannot ask to see the woman from the chest, in between the chest and the knees. You see, so this is a misconception, and if he does see that, then he is sinful. Yeah, he's sinful. It's not allowed, and the woman is not allowed to reveal it to him. Same thing for a man, he cannot. His hard aura. Some ulama hold the view that what convinces includes her character and her trustworthiness as well, whilst others pose as referring to her face, because this can convince as well. The latter, however, is not a strong opinion, as we have said, but it's better to combine the evidences. The viewing of the woman in this way, however, needs to be done in the presence of the mahram and for the purpose of marriage only. Also, the man must be trustworthy, and he can only see the aura overall, not to check something out specifically, i.e. she will wear normal dress showing her soft aura and no more. And it is useful to note here that it is makruh to marry her without looking at her beforehand. Yeah. So the woman, obviously, if it's a case of they're going to have a meeting where the man wants to see her, she should dress appropriately, where she can reveal her soft aura and not her complete aura, including the hard aura. Also, in choosing a suitable female companion, it's worthy for us to remember the hadith of the Messenger Muhammad ﷺ, who said, a woman is married for 4 things: her wealth, her family status, her beauty, and her religion, her deen. So you should marry the religious woman, otherwise you will be a loser. SubhanAllah. A dear Muslim, obviously this is a stern warning. You might see a woman and she's I don't know, this jaw-droppingly beautiful. You know, she think, oh, you know, she's like a supermodel. She's so beautiful. I don't care. I don't care if she got no deen. She needs to be my wife. You're gonna marry her, you're gonna be a loser, as the hadith says. There's been cases of where, subhanallah, I've heard cases of so-called Muslim men marrying Hindu women. This is not marriage. This is rejected. There's no such thing as a Muslim man marrying a Hindu woman. And all those children you're going to have from that is illegitimate. So this is rejected. And maybe fell in love with her. He saw her and was so bowled over by her beauty and ignored the fact that he's not even allowed to marry her. So obviously be very warned. And all of these things, in another hadith, the Prophet mentioned about, you know, the woman's beauty. You know, we all get old. She's not gonna, subhanAllah, be that supermodel looking kind of thing when you were both 18 and now she's 80. She's not gonna, or, you know, obviously, and you know, the beauty is something that will fade over time. So don't just beauty be your only reason, you know, you're most concerned. The most important thing is her deen. If she's someone God-fearing person, if she, you know, because that's the woman you want, you know, she's gonna take you to Jannah with her. She's gonna encourage you to call you to the Jannah, to the paradise. When you're maybe leading towards doing haram, she's gonna pull you away. That's the type of woman you want. You see, the woman who, when you have children, she's gonna, you know, sit down and read stories of the Quran with them, not sit down and watch Bollywood movies with the children. You don't want that kind of wife. And similarly, obviously, the Prophet also gave advice about looking for a boy, a good man to marry. In one hadith, he said, you know, if a boy comes to you with good deen and good character, marry him, or else there will be great fitna and corruption on earth. SubhanAllah. If a boy comes with good deen and he has good deen and he has good character, alhamdulillah, go ahead with it. You don't need to look, you know, yeah, but does he have a BMW? You know, does he have a degree? Is his salary over 50k a year? If he's someone who fears Allah, inshallah, he will take care of your daughter, because you will always fear the consequences, you know, of oppressing and doing injustice towards her. Money, as they say, money can't, you know, doesn't buy happiness. If the boy he has good deen and he has good character, inshallah, your daughter will be happy and you will be, you know, a sister will be happy. But if you think that, you know, he's obviously he has to maintain the wife, you know, but don't let that be your sole focus on how much he earns, you know, and, you know, does he have how many bedrooms does his house have, etc. Does he have a degree? These are not the most important things. And this is a reminder for those of us who fall into this trap of being deluded also by the non-Islamic environment around us, and thus look for the materialistic criteria in our future partners. Finally, engagement in Islam must be kept secret, and if it's broken, both parties are forbidden from speaking about what they know or have seen from each other. Engagement in Islam is thus a means to an end and not the end in itself. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has created mankind with certain instincts that need to be fulfilled, and He subhanahu wa ta'ala has also given us the method with which to fulfill them. It is within the nature of human beings to long for companionship emotionally and physically, and thus we fulfill this through marriage and marriage alone. Muslims need to remember that we are the slaves of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and not of man or of our own desires. The corrupt Western concept of engagement should not be implemented in our lives, and it is completely contrary to the laws of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And then, inshallah, this is the last bit, ending with this verse from surah number 30. I can't remember which surah that is, and verse number 21. This is a famous verse you usually see on the wedding cards. It's also says in the translation, and amongst his signs is that he created for you mates from amongst yourselves, that you may dwell in tranquility with them. And he has put love and mercy between your hearts. Verily in that there are signs for those who reflect. So that is my brief kind of reminder about marriage and about engagement. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to all those who are looking to bless them with pious husband and pious wives, inshallah, and allow us to fulfill the marriage in the way that is pleasing most to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and to stick within His limits, within His boundaries of His Sharia. And obviously, as I mentioned, my dear Muslim, the marriage topic is quite vast. There's many other bits you can talk about, from the rights of the husband and wife, how to have a happy marriage, etc. And inshallah, maybe in the future we'll talk about them. And as I mentioned, I'm only speaking about this topic because it's part of Islam. And there are many people who are looking to get married. And summer's coming up, commonly known as the marriage season. So we need to learn about what Islam says about the rules of marriage, etc., so that we do not fall into disobeying Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to accept this from us and make it beneficial for us, and Allah forgive me for anything that I've made a mistake or said incorrectly. Jazakallah khair for listening.